Well, you know what? I got to tell you, I think every blue state kind of has its wildfire, and it won't be a wildfire. It may be something else, but it's going to be a tipping point event. It's going to be something that essentially wakens up the voters there to the incompetence of their government. There's no doubt it's going to happen. It absolutely. In the state of Illinois, I think it might be an energy supply. But anyway, we just finished up lame duck session in Springfield. Not me, but those folks who were down there. And then the new legislators were sworn into office on Wednesday. So here to talk about some of that stuff that they passed is State Senator Chapin Rose. Chapin's a great guy, served in the House, now serves in the Senate. He's a leader. He understands the budget. He understands the crime stuff. He's just one of my favorite to talk to. So welcome to the program. Thanks for joining me tonight, Chapin.
Hey, thanks so much, Jeanne. And we shared the seat.
Yes, we
the
did.
Same seat in the house. So
it was the best seat
from
in the
me
house.
to you. So yeah,
yes.
And the best seat in the house. That's right.
It was, yeah.
Good talking to you. Good talking to you.
Yeah, and you know, Chapin's got a heart out at about 10 to the hour. So that clip I was going to play of Adam Carolla, which I really want to play, I'll play it towards the end of this half hour for my listeners who are anticipating that we're going to talk about that. But I mean, it's the same sort of discussion that we were having. And Chapin, let's just talk about this power situation because. As I was getting ready for the show, this Wall Street Journal article popped up. Trump speaks the truth to wind power. He says wind farms only work because of subsidies. He's right. Well, that's exactly what Warren Buffett said 10 years ago. He said the only reason to build wind power is to take the tax credits. That's what Warren Buffett said. Number one investor in the country.
You hit the nail on the head when you said that energy is going to cripple Illinois, and us downstaters have been living for the last couple of years with just catastrophic increases in our natural gas price and electricity price. And then I saw that in this past year, the new auction for, as you know, there's two different power grids in Illinois. There's a downstate grid, sort of a Chicago grid. But the auction for power for the Chicago grid is now going to go through the roof. And people who are on these local contracts that maybe their local village or town signed all the citizens up in the village for that. As those expire, you guys are going to have some extreme price shock. And I just mean extreme price shock. And, you know, for 3 years, we couldn't get J.B. Pritzker to lift a finger to help us down here. And then I noticed last fall, right when this thing hit, he's the first one out with a press release telling us all how he's going to do something. Well, the reality is he's the one who did it. His policies, this nonsense around energy in this state where you're closing, you know, you're not even like, look, even if you're buying the whole climate change thing and you want to close the coal-powered plants, you're also closing the natural gas-fired peaker plants, which are 99.9% efficient. Okay, so even if you hate carbon, you're still making idiotic policy decisions by closing the natural gas-fired peakers, especially in the summer. And now, you know, you've had both grid operators, the one for the northern sector and the one for the southern sector, who've come out and said, the next 3 to 5 years, Illinois will be facing brownouts, okay? This is unheard of in the modern era, absolutely unheard of. Brownouts on a regular basis now facing Illinois because of J.B. Pritzker and his buddies. And he gets away with this like he's this nice guy. Mm-hmm. And the truth is he's just like one more, you know, corporate billionaire guy that's trying to make all of his buddies rich, and he's getting away with it.
Well, that's exactly right. The reason you have to look to who's making the money off of wind power, that's the only reason to build wind. It's the producers. The PTC has been in place for 33 years now. It needs to go away. It's been in since 1992. There's no reason for the production tax credit for wind. If subsidies, and in fact, Wall Street Journal said the same thing. They absolutely said that at the bottom of their article. Where is it? Oh, yeah. The reality is that most wind projects wouldn't be built without federal subsidies and state renewable mandates, which we also have. We have an RPS standard. The wind production tax credit was established in 92 to boost an infant industry, but Republicans from wind states like Iowa, Kansas, and Wyoming have joined Democrats to extend it every time it comes close to lapsing. Now, the interesting thing is, renewable mandates. This came up in lame duck session because they put together a 291-page bill that essentially changes dramatically the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act that was basically related to renewable energy, and now says, well, we're not building renewable energy fast enough, so what we're going to do is we're going to incentivize battery manufacturers to come in and get additional special tax credits. And then at least in the House, the debate was like, oh, it's not going to cost the ratepayer anything. How can they say that with a straight face? Chapin.
It's insane. It's insane. Look, it'll be more rate hikes. Here's the other thing too that no one mentions, and this just gets back to this crony capitalist stuff, okay? And I think you and I are pretty strong capitalists, but what I'm not, and I'm pretty sure you're not, is a crony capitalist. And
That's right.
you know, our incumbent energy providers in this state are governed by the ICC, and we could have an entirely different argument a different day about the effectiveness of the Illinois Commerce Commission. But they have to go through regulations, and if they want to raise rates, there's a process, there's a hearing, and citizens can object, and they do object, okay? However, part of this renewable stuff, all these, venture capital, wind and solar things, they're not subject to any regulation, okay? Yet, when you say subsidy, let's just be clear to your listeners, subsidy is the dumbest freaking word in the world, because what it really is a tax increase, okay? Because subsidies are ultimately paid by the ratepayers. And who are the ratepayers? They're you and me and everybody else who lives in Illinois that wants to turn their lights on and turn their heater on, okay? Because when we pay our bill once a month, no matter where you're paying it, in Chicagoland or downstate, we ratepayers are the ones paying for all these quote-unquote subsidies. So you're subsidizing a bunch of venture capitalists who literally are not subject to any regulation at all. They can charge whatever they want to charge because there isn't even a Commerce Commission where they got to go make their case, okay? I mean, power in the old days, I mean, if you subscribe to, public goods versus private goods, power and military are sort of the two quintessential public goods. There's a reason we don't all have F-16s parked out front,
right.
for home defense. It's just not possible.
Right.
But when it comes to electricity and natural gas, we have these big, and you basically say, okay, you're going to be a monopoly, but you're going to be a governed monopoly. Well, what we've done here is we've taken these wind and solar people and said, we're going to give you a monopoly, but we're not even going to regulate you. Do whatever you want, venture capitalists. Half these people aren't even, a bunch of these companies aren't even certainly not Illinois companies. They're not even American companies.
Well, and the monopoly power that they have and the money that they're getting off of this, it must be so ginormous, because I have heard that in central Illinois, there are farmers that are going to get up to $4,000 an acre to put in a solar field. $4,000 an acre for 30 years guaranteed. They walk away from their farm. They go have a nice life in Arizona or Florida, and they don't have to put seed in the ground, cultivate it, and then also harvest it.
The solar guys in my area are getting more than $4,000.
Oh, that's disgusting.
And I'm also going to tell you this: when all this goes belly up and bankrupt,
it's going to go belly up.
All these things are going to be sitting, rusting out there in a farm field somewhere. There's going to be no money to remove them
and leaching off terrible materials into the ground.
Right, and we can get into the whole another side of sort of the anti-environmentalism thing here. I mean, there's actually studies about how terrible these things are for, like, the monarch butterfly, okay?
Yeah.
The migration of the monarch butterfly, the bald eagle. I mean, all these things environmentalists claim they're for, windmills in particular are really catastrophic. But here's the other thing, and no one is even thinking about this. And I want to, I realize you're up north, but, the area that I represent is literally the best farm ground in the world, bar none, period, okay? Yeah. You are replacing the best farm ground in the world. I've got a 4,000-acre solar farm in my district right now, okay? They're planning right now, Clark County, Illinois, they're planning on replacing a third of the tillable acres in Clark County, Illinois with solar in the next 2 years. A third of the tillable acres. First of all, why don't you just fire a third of the people in the county, because it's an agrarian rural county, it's all tied to farming. But how are you guys going to get food? How is Chicago going to get food when there's no place to grow?
You just hop in your electric vehicle and you go to the grocery store and there's food there, Chapin. Come on.
Food's there. Yep.
It's just there, right? We don't have to know how it gets there.
Right. And by the way, let's just talk, let's go back to 4,000 and just take the number you threw out a second ago. If I'm getting 4,000 per an acre for solar, then I'm going to have to get at least 4,000 per an acre for corn and beans, right? Well, what does that end up doing? What's it end up doing to the price of, I don't know, let's say, a loaf of bread? Oh, wait a minute, let's pick a gallon of milk. You know what cows eat? They eat grain, okay? How are they going to eat grain when
we'll just import it from Brazil?
Right. So exactly,
that's what they think.
Well, and let's take that down another line. And what does Brazil do? they're just burning down the rainforest, which is actually like the greatest environmental thing we have in the world, right?
Right.
It's a carbon sink.
Huge carbon sink.
And you're burning it down wholesale to create ground for corn and beans.
Okay, this goes back to the core problem we have. We have an incompetent government writ large. Not you, not other people who get it, but the people in charge right now in Illinois, in California, in New York, in D.C. are incompetent. And if voters better wake up, because if they don't, nothing will change. Hey, there's one other story before I let you go, because we're just blowing through the break, and I'm going to have a longer break after this. George, did you catch that? Thank you. He's up on that. Okay, I did want to talk about this one because it's a hot button issue with me. And that's this House Resolution 942 that passed in the House. And it's essentially says, hey, listen, you know what? We got to keep our minority teaching scholarship. This is a this is a scholarship worth $7,500 a year for 4 years if you get it. But you're only qualified to get it if you are a minority. No whites need apply. Do not apply if you're white. And because the Pacific Legal Foundation is suing the state of Illinois over this minority scholarship because it's blatantly unconstitutional. And because she was so upset about that, Laura Favor Diaz, whatever, two last name woman in the state house, she filed this resolution saying we got to support the minority scholarship. And I'll tell you what, and then she actually said on the House floor, Chapin, she said that if you're a minority and you learn from a minority teacher, you do better. And then I looked up the CPS results, and that is not true. Over 50% of the teachers are minorities, and the minority students do terrible.
That's a great stat. You just cited that last.
It's all true. I wrote it out in my newsletter. It's all true.
No, look, the Equal Protection Clause existed for a very good reason, right? Which is that we need to treat everybody equally. And when you look at the case that went to the U.S. Supreme Court a few years ago, which they rightly decided against Harvard, saying, hey, you can't do race-based admissions to colleges. It's just wrong on so many levels. And in fact, that case is based upon Asian Pacific students, basically being turned down. But the bottom line here is we shouldn't be using race as a proxy for virtually anything. First of all, it's insulting on its face to assume that somehow because you're born with a certain skin tone that you're either better or worse than someone else with a different skin tone. I mean, that is ridiculous in this day and age. Yet that is where our colleges and universities continue to default to this sort of race-based proxy for some level of, intervention. Well, what about just saying, hey, I don't care where you live. I expect you to do well. And I'm going to set high expectations. I'm going to set high goals and high bars. And I personally believe that, all students, no matter where they come from and whatever background they're in, if you set high bars, they're going to achieve those bars and they're going to surprise you. But if you keep setting the bar low, saying you're not good enough or you're not qualified enough or you need special help, well, guess what? Suddenly everybody stays, the bar stays low and they never get above that bar. I just think it's crazy that in this day and age, we're still operating off of race-based, proxies for some level of achievement. I mean, it ignores the kid who's born into poverty, who's
like a Ben Carson.
Yeah,
it's brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, or it ignores, or how fair is it to the kid, in Southern Illinois whose father died and mom is working 2 jobs to put food on the table. You're going to say that kid doesn't get a chance to go to college? That's ridiculous. I mean, it's just the whole thing's just silly. And again, in this day and age, you'd think we'd be past that, but higher education just seems to like it just wants to keep defaulting to it.
Well, Chapin, you're the best on higher education. I know you sit on those committees. I know you're a U of I graduate, double, I think, with your JD. Double. And I get a lot of good information from you. I'll be watching higher education committee in the House, at least. I expect you to brief me on the Senate. You also are the one who brought up the fact that they were trying to do race-based funding. And I'll tell you what, I've already talked to Pacific Legal Foundation on suing the state of Illinois if they ever come close to passing something like that. Yeah. So warning shot fired. I want to thank you so much, though, for coming on The Real Story with me. You're a breath of fresh air down in Springfield. Hey, thanks, Jeanne, for all you do. We'll look forward to being on again, okay? Okay, very good. Happy New Year to you. You too. And we're going straight to break. We'll be right back after this.